Sign them, Ethan! I've already wasted enough years waiting for you to become somebody.
Then maybe you should have waited one more day. What do you mean my grandfather left me $1 billion? And my wife just handed me divorce papers?
Sign the papers, Ethan!
I've wasted enough years waiting for you to become somebody.
Are you sure this is what you want? Completely.
The divorce papers were already on the table when I walked into the restaurant. My wife, Vanessa Hale, didn't even stand up. She simply pushed the envelope toward me and said, "Sign them, Ethan. I've already wasted enough years waiting for you to become somebody." I looked at the papers, then at the man sitting beside her. Graham Voss, a wealthy real estate developer, private jets, magazine covers. The kind of man Vanessa had recently started calling a business mentor. Graham smiled at me. "Don't take it personally. Some people are meant to build empires, and some are meant to watch." Vanessa folded her arms. "You're a decent man, Ethan, but decent doesn't pay for the life I want." I almost laughed, because 3 hours earlier, while I was repairing an old clock in my small workshop in Savannah, Georgia, a lawyer had called me 6 times. I ignored every call. I had no idea that my grandfather, a man I believed had died nearly broke 22 years ago, had just left me something. Not a house, not a savings account, a hidden fortune worth more than $1 billion. And inside the inheritance was something even more shocking. A sealed file containing Vanessa's name. I picked up the divorce papers and looked at her. "You're sure this is what you want?" She smiled. "Completely." So I signed. Neither Vanessa nor Graham noticed my phone vibrating again. The message on the screen came from the lawyer. "Urgent. Mr. Ward, do not sign anything involving your marriage until you hear what your grandfather left behind." I looked at the message, then at my ex-wife, and for the first time that night, I realized the divorce might not have been the biggest surprise waiting for me. My name is Ethan Ward. For most of my life, I believed I understood exactly where I came from. My father was a mechanic. My mother worked at a public library. And my grandfather, Samuel Ward, was a quiet old man who lived alone in a small house outside Savannah. He never drove an expensive car, never wore expensive clothes, never talked about money. When he died 22 years earlier, I was only 14. My father told me Samuel had left behind debts, an old house, and a collection of broken clocks. That was all. Or at least, that was what I had been told. Years later, I opened my own clock and restoration workshop. It wasn't glamorous. The shop sat between an antique bookstore and a closed bakery on a narrow street near Savannah's historic district. Every morning, I unlocked the old wooden door, turned on the lights, and spent my day repairing things other people had forgotten. Grandfather clocks, pocket watches, broken music boxes. I loved it. Vanessa never understood why. When we first met, she said my quiet life was refreshing. 5 years later, she called it embarrassing. The changes had been slow. At first, she wanted a nicer apartment, then better restaurants, then vacations I couldn't justify spending money on. Eventually, everything I did seemed to remind her of what she believed I lacked. Ambition, status, money. The strange thing was, I wasn't poor. I simply lived carefully. My workshop paid well enough. I owned my apartment. I had no debt. But compared to Graham Voss, I looked like a failure. Graham entered Vanessa's life 8 months before our divorce. He was developing a luxury hotel project outside Savannah. Vanessa worked for an architectural consulting firm, and her company had been hired to advise on the project. At first, she mentioned him casually. "Graham says this city is going to change completely." Then, Graham invited the entire executive team to dinner. Then, "Graham thinks I have leadership potential." Soon, his name was everywhere. I noticed. Of course I did. But I never accused Vanessa of anything. Maybe I should have. One night, I found her standing in front of the mirror before another business dinner. She wore a dress I'd never seen before. "You look nice," I said. She barely looked at me. "It's an important evening. With Graham." Her expression changed. "What is that supposed to mean?" "Nothing. Exactly. I turned back toward the book I was reading. But she wasn't finished. You know what your problem is, Ethan? I looked up. No. You don't care enough. About what? Anything. I smiled slightly. That seems dramatic. She stared at me. You repair clocks all day. Yes. And you're happy? Yes. That scares me. I didn't understand her. Not then. A month later, she stopped coming home regularly. There were conferences, late meetings, weekend events, and always a reason. Then, on a Thursday afternoon, I received an email from a law firm. The subject line read, "Regarding the estate of Samuel Ward." I assumed it was a scam. I deleted it. The next day they called. I ignored it. Then another call came. Then another. I was repairing a 19th century marine chronometer when my phone rang for the 6th time. Finally, annoyed, I answered. "This is Ethan Ward." A woman's voice responded. "Mr. Ward, my name is Naomi Price. I'm an attorney representing the Ward Family Trust." I paused. The what? The Ward Family Trust. My grandfather didn't have a trust. There was silence. Then Naomi said something strange. "I believe that's exactly what he wanted you to think." Before I could ask another question, the front door opened. Vanessa walked into the workshop. She looked furious. "We need to talk." Naomi remained on the line. "Mr. Ward, I strongly recommend that you come to my office before making any major financial or legal decisions." I looked at Vanessa, then at the clock sitting in pieces on my workbench. "What kind of legal decisions?" Naomi paused. "Divorce would qualify." I felt my stomach tighten. Vanessa was watching me. "Who is that?" I slowly lowered the phone. "Someone asking me to come to Atlanta." She laughed bitterly. "Of course. What does that mean?" "It means you're going to run away again." I stared at her. "Vanessa, I don't even know what this is about." She threw a folder onto the counter. I didn't need to open it. I already knew. "I'm done," she said. I looked at the folder. "Is this because of Graham?" Her silence answered me. "You're leaving me for him?" She crossed her arms. "I'm leaving because I finally realized I want more." "More than what?" She looked around my workshop. "This. The old clocks. The wooden shelves. The workbench my father had built. The place I loved." I nodded slowly. "Okay." She looked surprised. "Okay. What would you like me to say?" "I don't know. Fight for me." I looked directly at her. "You've already chosen." She picked up the folder. "Then sign. I'll have my lawyer look at it." She laughed. "Your lawyer?" "Yes. Ethan, you can't even afford to argue with me." My phone vibrated. "Naomi." A new message appeared. "Please do not discuss the trust with anyone." Vanessa grabbed her coat. "Tomorrow, 7 o'clock. Graham reserved a table at the Marlowe." I looked up. "Graham is coming?" "Yes." "Why?" "Because I don't want this to become ugly." I almost smiled. Then she left. The bell above the workshop door rang once. And suddenly, the room was silent. I looked down at my phone. Another message from Naomi appeared. "Mr. Ward, your grandfather did not leave you a small inheritance." A second message followed. "He left you control." I didn't sleep that night. At 5 in the morning, I closed the workshop and drove toward Atlanta. Naomi's office was on the top floor of an old financial building overlooking the city. Nothing about the place looked dramatic. That changed when the elevator doors opened. 2 men in dark suits were waiting. "Mr. Ward." "Yes." "This way." Naomi Price was younger than I expected. Maybe early 40s. Calm. Precise. She placed a single wooden box on the conference table. "Your grandfather left this for you." I stared at it. It was old. The same dark oak box that had once sat on Samuel's desk. "Why didn't anyone give this to me?" "Because the instructions were specific." "What instructions?" Naomi opened a folder. "You were not to receive control until your 36th birthday." I looked at her. "That was yesterday." She nodded. I leaned back. "So what exactly am I inheriting?" Naomi didn't answer immediately. Instead, She opened the wooden box. Inside was a brass key, and beneath it, an old photograph. My grandfather stood beside several other people outside a small warehouse. One of them was a younger version of a man I recognized. Harold Voss, Graham Voss's father. I looked at Naomi. Why is Graham's father in this picture? Her expression changed. Because this is where the story becomes complicated. Samuel Ward had not been poor. Not even close. In the 1970s, he had co-founded a shipping and logistics company called Harbor Meridian. The company started with one warehouse near the Savannah port. Over 40 years, it expanded quietly. Warehouses, freight terminals, private infrastructure companies, land near ports, land near rail lines, land nobody considered valuable until decades later. Samuel had sold parts of the business, but he never sold the core holdings. Instead, he transferred them into private trusts. By the time he died, those trusts already controlled assets worth hundreds of millions. Today, the combined value was estimated at $1.04 billion. I stared at Naomi. That can't be right. She turned a screen toward me. Property holdings, investment funds, private infrastructure contracts. Everything was there. My hands went cold. Why? Naomi looked at me. Why did he hide it? I nodded. She handed me a letter. It was written in my grandfather's handwriting. Ethan, if you're reading this, then you've reached the age I believed you would finally understand something important. Money changes the behavior of everyone around you. I wanted you to build a life before discovering what you could afford. I kept reading. Then I reached the final paragraph. And stopped. There is one more reason I kept the truth hidden. Harold Voss betrayed me. I looked up. Graham's father. Naomi nodded. Your grandfather and Harold were partners. What happened? Harold tried to take control of Harbor Meridian. And Samuel stopped him. I read further. Years later, Harold built his own real estate empire. The Voss family became wealthy. But according to the documents, they never forgot what happened. Naomi opened another file. This is the part you need to understand before you speak to Graham. Inside were land records, a massive waterfront redevelopment project outside Savannah. The same project Vanessa's company was consulting on. The project Graham had spent months discussing. My eyes moved across the documents. Then I understood. The entire project depended on one property, a forgotten industrial parcel near the old shipping canal. The property was controlled by the Ward Family Trust, my grandfather's trust. Graham didn't know I controlled it. He believed the land belonged to an anonymous holding company. Naomi looked directly at me. Yesterday morning, your grandfather's voting rights and controlling interests transferred to you. I laughed once. Not because it was funny, because I didn't know what else to do. So my wife is divorcing me tonight. Naomi smiled faintly. And the man she's leaving me for needs my property to finish his project. Naomi folded her hands. Exactly. Then she said something I wasn't expecting. There is another problem. What? She opened a smaller file. Inside were emails, messages, financial records. One name appeared repeatedly. Vanessa Hale. My heart sank. Tell me she isn't involved. Naomi looked at me carefully. We don't know yet. The emails showed Vanessa had been helping Graham's team identify historical ownership records. She had access through her consulting work. But there was no evidence she knew the land belonged to me. Still, someone had been searching for the identity of the trust owner. And now, I knew why. The dinner at the Marlowe suddenly felt different. This wasn't just a divorce. Something else was happening. I closed the file. What should I do? Naomi answered without hesitation. Go to dinner. And sign the papers? That depends. On what? On what they ask you to give up. That evening, I arrived at the Marlowe exactly on time. Vanessa was already seated. Graham sat beside her. Expensive suit. Confident smile. The divorce papers were waiting. Vanessa didn't waste time. Sign. I sat down. Graham poured himself wine. I hope this can remain civilized. I looked at him. I'm sure you do. Vanessa pushed the papers closer. I opened them. Most of it was normal. The apartment, savings, personal property. Then I reached the final page. The special clause. Any future claim Vanessa might have to property, assets, trusts, businesses, or inheritance connected to me would be waived permanently. I looked up slowly. Interesting. Vanessa frowned. What? This clause. Graham's expression didn't change. Standard legal language. I looked at him. Is it? Vanessa sighed. Ethan, just sign. I closed the folder. No. Silence. Her face hardened. What? I said no. Graham leaned forward. You don't want this to become difficult. I smiled. Funny. I was thinking the same thing. For the first time, Graham looked uncertain, and I realized something. He didn't know about the inheritance, but somehow, he knew there was something worth protecting. Vanessa followed me outside the restaurant. Ethan. I kept walking. She caught my arm. What was that? What? You embarrassed me. I looked at her. I embarrassed you? You refused to sign. Yes. Why? Because I read it. She stared. That clause. Yes. It's legal language. Then you shouldn't mind if my lawyer reviews it. Her eyes shifted. Just for a second. But I saw it. You already have a lawyer? I smiled slightly. Apparently I do. She stepped back. For the first time in our marriage, Vanessa looked nervous. The next morning, Naomi called. We traced the divorce clause. To Graham? Yes. My stomach tightened. Vanessa knew? Naomi paused. She knew Graham's lawyers prepared the agreement. That hurt. Not because of the money, because she had looked me in the eyes and told me this was about love ending. But Graham had turned it into business. Naomi continued. There is more. The waterfront parcel wasn't the only thing Graham needed. My grandfather had also left behind historical partnership records. Records proving Harold Voss had illegally transferred certain port assets decades earlier. Assets Graham's current empire still depended on. If those records became public, the Voss Corporation could face enormous lawsuits. Suddenly, the inheritance wasn't just a fortune. It was evidence. And someone was desperate to keep me from discovering it. That afternoon, I returned to my workshop. I expected silence. Instead, Graham was waiting. He stood beside my workbench. Nice place. I locked the door. What do you want? To talk. You have 5 minutes. He smiled. Vanessa was right about you. I looked at him. Oh, you're more stubborn than you look. He placed a folder on the table. Name your price. I didn't touch it. For what? Sign the divorce papers. I laughed. You came to my clock shop to negotiate my divorce? Let's call it a clean ending. I stared at him. You're scared. His smile disappeared. No. Yes, you are. I stepped closer. You don't care whether Vanessa and I get divorced. He remained silent. You care about something in those papers. His eyes hardened. You have no idea what you're dealing with. I smiled. Then educate me. He leaned toward me. Walk away, Ethan. No. For your own good. I looked at the old clocks surrounding us. Then back at him. You know what's funny? What? My whole life, people thought I repaired broken things because I was afraid of taking risks. Graham said nothing. I continued. The truth is, I repair them because eventually every mechanism reveals where it failed. His expression changed. I tapped the folder. And I think yours is about to. He left without another word. 2 days later, Vanessa came to the workshop. This time she was alone. She looked tired. Graham told me you threatened him. I laughed. Of course he did. Did you? No. She looked around the shop. I don't understand what's happening. You could have asked. Asked what? Why Graham cared so much about our divorce. Her face changed. You think he used me? I think you should ask yourself that. She became angry. I loved you once, Ethan. I nodded. I know. And you stopped trying. No. Yes. You just stopped noticing. Her eyes filled with tears. What does that mean? I looked toward the window. You wanted expensive things, bigger places, better connections. And I thought you were becoming someone else. She whispered. Maybe I was. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. Then my phone rang. Naomi. I answered. Her voice was urgent. Ethan, do not go home. I froze. Why? We found someone inside your grandfather's trust office. What? Files are missing. My heart began racing. Naomi continued. And Graham Voss has just filed an emergency lawsuit claiming the Ward family trust owes his company ownership rights. I looked through the workshop window. Across the street, a black SUV was parked. Someone was watching. The inheritance had finally become public. And now, Graham was coming for everything. The courtroom was packed 3 weeks later. News cameras waited outside. Graham's lawsuit had become public. The headlines were everywhere. Unknown Savannah clockmaker inherits billion-dollar empire. Overnight, my life had changed. Customers recognized me. Reporters waited outside my apartment. People who hadn't spoken to me in years suddenly wanted to reconnect. My grandfather had been right. Money changed everyone. But I wasn't interested in the attention. I wanted the truth. Graham's attorneys argued that Harbor Meridian's original partnership agreement entitled the Voss family to half of the Ward Trust. Naomi stood. That's impossible. The judge looked at her. Why? Naomi placed an original document on the screen. Samuel Ward's signature. Harold Voss's signature. And one clause Harold had spent decades trying to erase. A betrayal clause. If either partner attempted to secretly transfer company assets or sabotage the business, their ownership rights would automatically terminate. The courtroom became silent. Graham's attorney stood quickly. Objection. Naomi smiled. There's more. She presented the historical records. Harold Voss had secretly moved assets into shell companies. He had tried to bankrupt Harbor Meridian. Samuel discovered it and terminated the partnership. Graham's entire claim collapsed in less than an hour. But the biggest surprise came afterward. The judge looked at Graham. Mr. Voss, did you know these records existed? Graham said nothing. That was answer enough. Outside the courthouse, Vanessa was waiting. She looked nothing like the woman who had handed me divorce papers. No expensive dress. No Graham beside her. Just Vanessa. I didn't know, she said. I stopped. About what? The lawsuit. The land. Your grandfather. I studied her face. I believe you. She looked relieved. Then I added, but you knew the divorce papers came from Graham's lawyers. Her eyes dropped. Yes. Why? He said it would protect us. Us. She started crying. I thought he was helping me build a better future. I looked at her. And now, she looked toward the courthouse. Now I think he was building his future with me standing in front of it. For the first time, she understood. But understanding doesn't always repair what was broken. She held the divorce papers. I'll sign a new agreement. You don't have to. What? I'll sign the original divorce. She stared at me. After everything? Yes. You're not going to punish me? I shook my head. No. Why? Because I don't want my life to become about proving you made a mistake. She cried harder, and I realized something important. The $1 billion didn't make me powerful. The choice did. Graham's empire didn't collapse overnight. But the investigations began. Historical asset transfers. False ownership claims. Fraudulent financial disclosures. Within 6 months, his company was forced to sell several major developments. The waterfront project was canceled, and the parcel everyone had been fighting over remained under my control. I could have sold it. Developers offered hundreds of millions. Instead, I did something my grandfather probably expected. I turned the property into a maritime innovation center. Local engineers, shipping researchers, small businesses, scholarship programs. The same waterfront Graham wanted to turn into luxury towers became a place where people could build something of their own. Naomi visited the site on opening day. You realize you could have retired. I know. Bought an island. Probably. Disappeared forever. I smiled. I repair clocks. She laughed. You own a billion-dollar empire. And you're still going back to that little shop? I looked toward Savannah. Yes. Why? I thought about my grandfather. His old wooden box. His letter. The years he let everyone believe he had nothing. Then I answered. Because I don't want to forget who I was before anyone knew what I owned. A year after Vanessa handed me the divorce papers, I returned to the same restaurant. The Marlowe. Same table. Same view. But everything was different. Naomi sat across from me. She raised her glass. To Samuel Ward. I smiled. To Samuel. My phone buzzed. A message from Vanessa. There was no request. No attempt to return. Just one sentence. I finally understand why you never needed Graham's life. I looked at the message for a moment, then locked my phone. Not angrily, peacefully, because she was finally right. I never needed Graham's life. I never needed his money, his reputation, or his approval. And I certainly didn't need $1 billion to prove I had value. The fortune had only revealed something that was already there. My grandfather hadn't made me successful. He had simply waited until I understood that success couldn't be inherited. It had to be chosen. My wife handed me divorce papers believing she was leaving behind a man with nothing. She didn't know that, hours earlier, I had inherited $1 billion fortune. But the real twist? Even if I hadn't, I still would have signed. Because sometimes the greatest inheritance isn't money. Sometimes, it's finally understanding what you no longer need to hold on to.